I want to present my paper that aims at analyzing the role played by cultural institutions in the Italian context. The paper titled Photography and Culture Jamming, Practices of Subvertisement in the Public Discourse. So it deals with the dissemination of photographic subvertisement created by the movement of culture jamming, especially in the Italian context. One moment. Okay. Do you see the next slide? Yes, it's okay. I hope. I don't know if it works. Okay, I go ahead. So first of all, I try to define what is culture jamming. I explore the movement in brief, the Adbuster magazine, the main initiatives of this network of activists. Then I focus on this anti-brand communication and analyze some example of visual subvertisement, the so-called spoof ads. The point two, I wonder what happens when these images subvert the mainstream narratives, offering alternative and inclusive representation of ethnicity, age, and gender. So in particular, I focus on gender subvertisement and show you some cases. Then I explore the role played by cultural institutions for the spreading of visual subvertisement, especially the focus is on some exhibition in Italy. Adbuster, guastatori di pubblicità, that means waster of advertisement, and then the movement of guerrilla girls, and then the JR, the street artist JR, in order to understand if these images have been inscribed or not in the Italian public discourse. So the research started many years ago, and part of the results have been published in this article, Gender Advertisement and Culture Jamming, co-author with Annalisa Tota. I'm now working in the direction of analyzing the practice of subvertisement in the public discourse, and I want to introduce you some points and reflection from this new part of the research. So first of all, what is culture jamming? The name derives from jamming, the very common practice to interrupt radio broadcasting through different messages. The term was firstly used by a college music band, so-called Negativland, for the album Jump Con 84 to describe the subversion of media meaning, especially the type of billboard banditry that began to appear in the 80s on the street of, especially of San Francisco, and by a collective so-called Billboard Liberation Front. It is the act of transforming media to produce commentary about itself using the original communication methods based on irony, on the spoof. It is a form of public activism which is generated in opposition to commercialism, and it is a resistance movement based on the idea of guerrilla communication. So, four main points. This is an elastic category based on the idea of creative resistance and guerrilla communication, which includes a multitude of resistant practices. Then culture jammers introduce artistic practices in not institutionalized and unexpected space. They also use humor to promote awareness and self-reflexibility. And I'm very interested in what happened in public spaces like museum and cultural institutions. So then this is the main point. And culture jamming, in fact, reminds the appropriation art of the 50s and the 70s and the bricolage aesthetics of the 70s punk science. It expressed creativity, challenged tradition, and introduced new ways of thinking. And then anti-consumer culture. So culture jamming refers to several strategies developed by activists to critique and subvert the working of consumer culture, as well to interrupt the that pervade our daily lives. Culture jamming promotes consumerism, and it can be consumer boycott and a way to encourage. And last but not least, jammers' work combine visual art and public activism in order to criticize the mainstream consumer culture and advertising strategies, revealing its deep inequality and stereotypes. Okay. So who are culture jammers? This is who compares this strategy to the strategy of communication guerrillas by Umberto Eco, the Italian scholar Umberto Eco, introducing noise into the signal as it passes from transmitter to receiver, encouraging idiosyncratic unintended interpretation. So jammers are artists and activists of different geographic contexts and various fields of visual culture. So obviously I focus on photographic subvertisement. They construct images, words, logos, city wall, billboards, websites, transforming these into something new with parody, with the strategy of the tournement. For example, turning the cigarette mascot Joe Camel into the famous series Joe Camel cartooning parody. Yes. One of their most famous composition is the composition so-called corporate flag. No. I show you on the right side of the slide. The stars representing the United States of America are the brands of the main corporation. The visual emphasizes the interrelation between American political power and the economic power of brands. No? A photographic version of the corporate flag is Brand Baby, in which we see a mother symbolically nursing a baby that has the logos of the male corporation tattooed on his skin. So acts of culture jamming are acts of semiotic terrorism because they terrorize the symbols and codes that subordinated our willings, our desire to corporate imperatives, to branding. And the magazine that hosts their most famous artistic production, called Spoof Ads, is the magazine so-called Adbusters, founded at the end of '80s in Vancouver by Carl Lasn. The subtitle is The Journal of Mental Environment. in particular, the activists work against some brands like the brands of tobacco, alcohol, fashion, fast food. And the most famous production appear here and on the social platform of the magazine. The Adbuster Media Foundation over the years has launched several initiatives. They buy nothing day, the day without buy, the week without TV, the turn off TV. We can see a poster of a baby who has the high like a TV, and Unbrand America for the symbolic day of July the 4th, the Independence Day, inviting people to go into the street with spray, paint brushes to cover the logos, unbrand the logos of corporation, of multinationals on billboards. First of all, I need to identify different types of these alternative images called spoof ads. We analyzed this new text realized by the jammers with some concepts, some notions, some categories. One is the anchorage, defined by Roland Barthes. The anchorage obviously occurs when the text is used to focus on one of the multiple, the different meanings provided by image. And the decoding activities with the theoretical framework provided by Stuart Hall, by the decoding model, and concepts like hybridization highlighted by Nestor Canclini. So, as Stuart Hall points out, images are particularly effective for transmission of ideological content and are very powerful because they appear much more realistic in the world, no? The main point of your inspiring conference, inspiring symposium, but we can see this movement, how to subvert meanings. The spoof ads remind to a very well-known visual text that was decoded several times in the past. In accordance with the analysis of Annalisa Tota provided in the research I mentioned before, they not imply any opposite decoding. On the contrary, they require an hegemonic decoding. We can see some example. Yes, this is the subvertising of Nike. No? This photographic image intentionally recalls a typical Nike commercial, the commercial put on the left side, aimed at promoting female empowerment, self-determination through sport. But in the spoof ad, the text that anchors the image, the anchorage, in fact, refer to another universe of meaning, that of the exploitation of work in the Adjunct factory where Nike sneakers are produced. I hope you can read the text. And then move to McDonald's advertisement. This and the following images play on the decontextualization of the logo with the typical shape of the M, the golden arch of McDonald's, and its resemantization in other contexts, an operating room like this with the patient graphic here that takes the shape of the M, or a letter of the word grease used as a band-aid to plug the mouth of the Ronald, the testimonial, the clown Ronald, or the shoulders of an overweight boy that have the shape of M. Or Marlboro advertising. Spoof ads wants to depict another country, Marlboro country, not the one set in the American grassland where horses run, but the one where you cannot smoke, obviously, in enclosed spaces, and therefore smokers must smoke during coffee break in outdoor spaces, and they maybe catch a cold, as it is written in the off at the bottom of the visual. Smoking causes hypothermia. And then we can see the advertising of Absolute vodka. Absolute vodka over the years have always combined the bottle and the brand as an adjective to a positive noun such absolute joy, absolute paradise, fun, and so on. Spoof ads, on the other hand, uses negative nouns such as hangover or or impotence, and therefore created a visual in which the bottle symbolizes a rope or symbolizes the impotence, the male impotence, or a car accident sign. And I wonder what happens when these images suggest subverting the mainstream narratives, offering alternative and inclusive representation of ethnicity, age, and gender. I want to offer a short, very briefly focus on gender subvertisement. Culture jamming aims at contrasting the spread of images with young and skinny models, such as those proposed by Calvin Klein in the famous advertising, for example, advertising campaign Obsession with the supermodel Kate Moss. It wants to explore, through the device of irony and falsification of the brand, a redefinition of subjectivity. Culture jamming reveals some of the consequences of adapting to the pattern often required in the fashion world. Extreme thinness that can lead to eating disorder, for example, or in the male declination is ironic about the male preoccupation with his own attributes and propose a new fragrance with a new model adapted to this representation, reality for men. My research objectives, as I mentioned before, are aimed at studying the reception of this work, of the work of these artists in Italy, in order to understand the dissemination, the reception of their work. These images are spread mostly on digital platforms, often take the shape of digital memes. But I wonder, can this visual subvertisement created by movement of culture jamming join the institutional space and produce public knowledge? So we want to analyze the role played by cultural institutions in relation to the dissemination and the diffusion of these alternative representation. So have these images been inscribed in the Italian public discourse? The focus is on the exhibition of some culture jammers, such as guerrilla girls and the French photographer and street artist J.R., as well as the Italian exhibit Adbuster Guastatori di Pubblicità. In Italy, there have been few exhibitions about culture jammers. We don't deal here with Banksy, the famous English writer, considered one of the greatest exponents of the street art, who had two exhibitions in Rome in recent years because his art is about graffiti and stencil art. So the first exhibition is Guastatori di Pubblicità, waster of advertising, that took place in 2002 at the Stazione Leopolda in Florence on the occasion of the European Social Forum. The meeting convened for an open and interactive dialogue between civil society, representative of states, and intergovernmental organization, and was an exhibition dedicated to the creatives of anti-advertising and culture jammers. This was the poster that intended to reflect on the abuso on Prozac compared to the washing powder bottles of the 50s advertisement. And Guerrilla Girls, as you well know, are a female collective who remain anonymous by wearing gorilla mask and that react against sexism and racism in the art world and culture. And they have produced over 80 poster, printed projects and action presented in several exhibitions. This is one of the first posters. Do women have to be naked to get into the Met Museum? And was a reflection of underrepresentation of women in art world. And in Italy, the Guerrilla Girls were invited to participate in an exhibition of the 2005 Venice Biennale, and the girls created poster addressing gender discrimination in Hollywood and the art world in general. And we can see the women artists in Venice, and we move to the last work of J.R., the French photographer and street art. I think in this context, this work appears significant. J.R. in the last year has created works in Italy, and J.R. realized many works with a black and white photographic collage typical of his style. One of them is Women Are Heroes, a project that was to underline women's essential role in society and to highlight their dignity by photographing them in their daily lives and pasting their photograph in different village. In the same year, JR organizes the largest photographic exhibition, an illegal photographic exhibition. For this project, portraits of Israelis and Palestinians are passed face to face. This is also the title of the exhibition, face to face, in monumental formats on both sides of the wall and in several Palestinian and Israeli cities. This year, JR realized 2 works in Italy in order to reflect on the difficulties of accessing culture during the pandemic, the coronavirus. This work have the form of trompe-l'œil. JR proposed a sort of visual glimpse, visual wand. In fact, this work is titled La Ferita, means the wound. And on the external wall of Palazzo Strozzi and also Palazzo Farnese in Rome, which opens to the vision of a real and imaginated interior at the same time. So in conclusion, in the Italian sign, although there are very recent examples like JR that prompt us to continue to investigate the reception of the movement at the institutional level, we can think alternative representation are struggling to establish itself in the Italian public discourse. Probably why the tactics of culture jamming now have new space in social media and digital platform, where especially take the shape of memes. that is a new way to engage, especially youth, in politics and social issues, but in a not artistic representation. So in conclusion, these alternative images have not yet received institutional confirmation in Italy. So I added some references, as you can see, and thanks for your attention.